Initially, we were looking in leaps and bounds. So we went into the document, chose a fraction piece, which was our next strand. So we did the diagnostic with the students and found that they were not representing the set model appropriately. That led to our next question.
Sure. We noticed the kids weren't going to use manipulatives when maybe they could have helped them, even on the diagnostic, any task, and they wouldn't necessarily go get them and use them. A few kids would, or maybe if they were in a learning center, they would go get them. But we noticed that would have been a help for them for doing fractions, and we wanted them to have that opportunity to use the manipulatives. So that's one of the reasons why we developed that as part of our focus.
Well, the survey really showed us that many of the students felt that manipulatives were meant to help them rather than be a tool for representing their thinking. Another piece was they also felt that only students that went to the Learning Resource Center were the ones that used manipulatives. So it almost seemed to be something that set them apart from other students.
As a weakness, maybe.
As a weakness rather than a strength or something good mathematicians do.
Well, I think what we did was we went to the classroom to do some either co-teaching or watching other people do a lesson, and we really got to see them use the manipulatives in the classroom, or see if they're not using them, or how they were using them, and then from there we could take that and develop lessons further to see if we could sort of not force them, but make it more available to them, either modeling it or having them right out there. We came up with some new manipulatives that might be fun for them to use to represent sets of fractions. We got some jewels that were kind of neat, or some erasers so they could model it. And we made it available to everyone, and made it we all did it together, so it was so we all felt like we're all doing the manipulatives. Maybe make them more comfortable with it.
And one of the other pieces that we noticed that was during the times where we went to visit each other's classrooms, we heard ourselves use words like, if you need these manipulatives. And so that was one of the first things that we started changing, was our own vocabulary, the way we described using the tools during math, so that the kids didn't continue to have that initial viewpoint reinforced.
Well, I think I saw more students feeling comfortable getting the manipulatives out and representing the sets. And some of the weaker kids who might not have really got that concept were able to get the manipulatives and show it maybe on their desks, show maybe fourths sets of things, and be able to actually deepen their understanding of what it was. And then when we had to reflect and connect, you saw those kids participating and explaining their learning, whereas before they might not have been able to say anything if they were just writing something or drawing something, but actually having modeled it in front of them with the different sets of things, they could actually see and deepen their understanding and show their understanding using the manipulatives.
I think that one most important thing about the representing their thinking was that the kids were then able to make a real connection between fractions of a set and fractions of a whole. So it really allowed us to dig into what does the numerator represent, what does the denominator represent in all of those different cases. So the kids could then represent everything that was in their minds. They could then visualize how to explain their thinking.
Yeah, we saw some lights going on and saying, oh, that's the same as this, right? So half is the same as 6/12, even though it's a set model.
One of the things that I ended up noticing was that the students were feeling far more comfortable with using the manipulatives, the language around it, including using more mathematical vocabulary while we were having accountable talks. The piece that I'd like to continue working on is encouraging the students to choose manipulatives independently on their own, rather than always needing prompting. So that would be my next. Well, ultimately I noticed that a lot of how students perceive their use of manipulatives comes from my modeling. So if I model appropriate vocabulary, if I'm encouraging and I show them how it could possibly be represented, then they feel more secure in choosing their tools and can show me ways that I didn't even think of them using. One of the clearest things on the survey was students were assuming now that good mathematicians use tools, not just someone who needs them. So a tool is something to show your thinking.
Yeah, I think they thought that more of them said everyone should be using them now than just if you need it, or just if you're going to the learning center, or just if you're struggling. I think when we saw the post survey, they were a lot more comfortable in the end using them. I think we need to still work on it through other strands too, and not just abandon it after fractions. I think you need to bring it into the other strands as well, and consciously think about what we're doing, like you said, the way you're talking or the way they're presented, and make sure they're available and out there for them to use, and continue that throughout the